Cryptocurrency was already seen as a liberating force. However, do you see blockchain eventually becoming a device used to control us once all our data starts becoming available on chain? Great question. Yeah, it's very funny how 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, the internet was going to solve everything because we were going to get rid of government. We were going to have this wonderful vestige. And remember, I've been doing business on the internet since 1994, my goodness. And I was clearly, I don't know, neon or something. A fascinating concept that the more that the libertarians managed to push the internet, the more the government's pushed back. And therefore you have the very heavily controlled areas of the internet, such as, for example, potentially in countries like China. You've got areas of countries which have tried to control the internet. I mean, particularly the United Kingdom's government under the entirely analog and incompetent Theresa May as Prime Minister was trying to do all sorts of things to control the internet just a couple of years ago, which died out. Certainly the capture of data is going to become an incredibly worrying and concerning feature for people across the world. And in fact, actually 9 years ago, I think I stood up at a conference in the University of Turin talking about the Copernican revolution in finance, which was blockchain and cryptocurrency. People were convinced that there was a singularity. It was going to be the Bitcoin, and that was going to be the only blockchain out there. As we can see at the moment, there are a myriad of blockchains. We could spend just the rest of the whole bulletin talking about what different blockchains there are. I think the fact that there are going to be many different competing blockchains will allow people to have better privacy and a better opportunity to control that. I think that leaves the banking system at a huge disadvantage, because ultimately the banking system is used to 1,000 basis points on everything. 10 percentage points has been their kind of markup. Even on mortgages, they're used to at least 300 basis points there or thereabouts. 250, absolute minimum 175. It's a 1.75% markup, which is incredible because you're looking at the best exchanges in the world are at a fraction of a basis point in terms of what's going on. Yes, it might be, but I'm not really convinced. Okay, I'm actually not one of these Bitcoin permabills. I know there are people out there that say each Bitcoin is going to be worth $500,000, it's going to be worth $500 million, it's digital gold. No, it's not. Actually, I'm really quite cynical. I wouldn't say I'm a Bitcoin minimalist, but I'm certainly not a Bitcoin maximalist. It's always going to have a certain value because it's going to have a certain cachet around the world. But ultimately, what's good about gold? You can wear it. You can use it in various industrial processes. It has some form of function. Bitcoin is just bits and bytes. There's absolutely nothing underpinning it. How do you see the governments supporting influencing exchanges going forward? That's a great question. Because in the old analog world of exchanges, whence I come, the biggest success factor for a lot of national exchanges is actually how well the government gets behind it. So therefore, for example, you could look at a lot of emerging Central Eastern European states, which was a fascinating experiment from the late 1980s on, and see that Poland, the sixth largest country in Europe in terms of essentially population and land mass within the European Union, it's a phenomenally high, thriving nation these days. But it was not always thus. And yet the government there really got behind the stock exchange, the Warsaw Stock Exchange, from the very early days. The government actually controls it to this day. So therefore, governments really, really need to get their act together and be supporting and influencing for exchanges going forward. And certainly the governments who are most coherently intelligent about embracing a central bank digital currency, about embracing great settlement modes for different marketplaces, they're going to be the winners in the future. As of January 2021, there were 4.66 billion active internet users worldwide, 59.5% of the global population, which is what, about 7.8 billion at the moment, isn't it? Of this total, 92.6, 4.32 billion access the internet via mobile devices. Gosh, I'm actually quite surprised it's as few as 92.6 actually. This means that just over 40% of the global population do not have digital access. How will this digital divide affect the social and economic revolution an effective blockchain economy will bring? Should an effective blockchain exchange be accessible to the masses? The more people that are in the exchange business, the better. At the moment, what we have is a whole series, a myriad of problems here. Digital access, big problem for those 3 billion people that we need to get online as fast as possible. And they're going to come online with a mobile device, incidentally. They're not going to be using something like a desktop computer. We need to get them online. We need to get them engaged in the economy. And more importantly, we need to give them a currency that they can transact with us with, because whatever that is, Central African zonk that nobody accepts outside of Zonkia, is just not going to cut it in the modern world. And the faster we can get people online, the faster people can get people educated and raising their standards, the faster we can get them interacting into that global economy. And good grief, it is incredibly exciting, because we've already managed to raise, without the digital world per se, many, many billions of people out of poverty in my lifetime. And which one, according to me, will be the long-term winner? Blockchain finance or cryptocurrency? Blockchain finance. I think cryptocurrency is a kind of a relatively short-term development. Asset-backed units are going to be the thing in the future. I said that actually 22 years ago in Capital Market Revolution. I talked about them as being electronic trading units. I talked about them being effectively backed by different forms of asset. I think, therefore, what we see at the moment in cryptocurrency terms are relatively vague, simple, early gateway drugs, as I described blockchain or Bitcoin earlier on. I think the sophistication we're going to see through those systems going forward is going to be quite incredible, because certainly going back to, for example, this argument over national currency being Bitcoin, I mean, that's actually, I'm sorry, that's laughable, because the Bitcoin blockchain is simply incapable of functioning at the sort of scale that is necessary to be a national currency.